They're very like less military, more government influence. They really don't have the strength to defend themselves as well as capitalist countries do.
Okay, this is what I think about socialism, is that, see, capitalism is in such a, this is the thing, capitalists, the dummies get to make the decisions. Socialism, the government, the people who know what they're talking about do get to make the decisions.
Who do you in a capitalist society think are the supposed dummies?
The people.
The people?
Yes, the people.
Why?
Because they're people. They don't. Okay, people in government have like the smarts. They've gone to political science classes. Okay, a redneck hick isn't gonna know what. I doubt they even know what the difference between capitalism and communism and socialism is. But I mean, and you're letting these people make the country's decisions, and allowing that to happen is bad.
Well, yeah, this is true, but still. What they're doing is they're voting for the people, the supposed dummy, the people. They're voting for the people who are educated on that to be put in office.
See, that's the problem, though, is that you're able to make the dummies put in more dummies going into office. Because I'm not saying
that's the only problem with America is that at least 90-some% of the demographic nation, of the entire demographic of the nation, isn't educated voting wise and politically wise, and that's why capitalist countries like us have
economic recessions.
That's not our fault. That's the market. It pretty much has a mind of its own.
See,
that's honestly not our fault. It's whatever like if I wanted an iPod, I would go out and buy an iPod if I had money for it. Now, say in the next 3 months or whatever, iPod sales go down. That's just the consumers changing demand, and they're changing in style and whatnot because of the fact that maybe the iPod isn't as popular, maybe the Zune sells more. And it's just in the certain markets, things go up and down. It's just a roller coaster market, but it sustains itself to the point where we won't crash like communism. Because we have enough money to sustain certain things, and we can spend more, and basically we won't ever go bankrupt, even though the national debt is climbing. But that's not our fault. That's, well, sort of our fault because we elect some leaders, but it's the leaders' faults for making those decisions. We don't have any real...
Well, we elected those people to make those decisions, which is the people's fault.
But guess what? Only about 15% of the nation actually decides who to elect, and those 15% of people usually make the right decision. And I just thought of another thing. Honestly, we should abolish the electoral college.
Me too.
It should be a total just direct vote. No, you don't vote. The problem with the electoral college is you vote for a representative who's automatically biased for one candidate or whatever. And the winner take all system, bad.
Exactly.
Because one candidate wins a state, they win all the electoral votes. Then the minority of, like, say a state's mainly Democratic and they have a majority or a minority of Republicans. Then with the winner take all system, then if a Democratic candidate sweeps the state, the minority of Republicans is screwed.
Exactly.
because the Democratic candidate gets all the state's delegates. That I don't agree with. And this is gonna sound a little funny, but honestly, the election for president should be like a text vote, like American Idol. You text in with either A or B for the candidate, and then they tally the votes.
Okay. Anyway,
I'm just kidding.
Define rich, middle class, and poor.
Poor, basically the crack addict and the homeless guy on the street.
Okay.
And the middle class would be like my family or your family, like the working people who they're not exactly pulling in the like six-figure. Money per year, but they're not
define it through a system that the American government can. Like today, income.
Basically, I would define poor as $30,000 or less per year. Middle class, $30,000 to about $55,000, $60,000 a year, and then rich or $60,000 or more.
Okay. What about
per year?
But let's say, I know that. Okay, I'm actually a pretty poor, middle class, poor family.
Lower middle class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I live in Northern Virginia, and that is like, okay, there's
the
more
most
demand. But if I was to go to Georgia and still make the same amount of money,
you'd be able to get a nicer house.
Right. I'd be able to get by.
And the reason that this area is so expensive now is because of the sudden spike in population growth. And some of these areas that used to be affordable the rates are just going sky high because of the crime rates and basically the major factor that drives the property value up is crime. Because the more and more crime in an area, the less and less people want to live there, so the prices jack up. And that's the problem with the real estate market is the subprime lending crisis.
And how does my income make me rich in Georgia but lower middle class here?
The fact that this area is driven up, the crime rate has like almost doubled in the past 10 years in this area, to the point where
but then
houses are so expensive.
Then how can you define people by their income in order to say if they're rich or not, if you can be rich in one area and then non-rich in the other?
You define it by income because of the fact that basically you define rich or poor by material possessions. That's the simple left and right of it, because like I could probably get like a huge flat screen TV the size of that wall, but I wouldn't be able to have certain other things like cable, or we might go hungry for a month. It's just the fact that anybody can buy anything. It's just whatever they buy sort of determines what class they're put in. And the fact that we're a classist society is bad because communism failed just because everybody got the same amount of money. But with capitalism, it sustained itself to the point where everybody competes for money. And that's another reason
So money, that's all people want.
That's basically capitalism, but the fact that you have the freedom to do that is what sustains basically the capitalist system.
Okay, but I mean, like, why classes? Why can Joe on the street be better than me simply because he makes more? I mean, see, that's what I don't get is, I feel like, let's say I'm a teacher, okay,
mm-hmm.
and then Joe over there is a big fat CEO, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say
he makes more money because of whatever he's selling.
Because of his position as a CEO. I'm just a teacher, but he has a position as a CEO. Class.
And if he's the CEO of a company that makes a major U.S. product that everybody in the U.S. either owns or wants to own,
but that doesn't mean he's working harder. That doesn't mean he's working harder.
That does not mean that he's working harder. It's just that he moved
up.
That
isn't fair. But he's getting more.
He moved up the corporate ladder to the point where he makes enough money. He makes more money than everybody.
There's always capitalist pigs that go in and put these people in power.
Yes, that happens sometimes. But say you work at McDonald's, or say you work in a department store.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could start out as some lowly cashier. Then eventually you move up in positions from sales and whatnot, and you could end up the CEO of Target for all you know, and you started off as a cashier basically. That's how capitalism works. It's sometimes friends of the big important CEOs and CFOs and all that, they get put in that place, and that's not fair, but it happens. But the fact that most, like 90-some% of the American population works up the corporate ladder to get where they are.
90%, there's still 10% able to get there, and I don't like it.
That can get there through connections. That I do not agree with. I agree with you have to climb the ladder to get to where you want to go. It's just like school. You have to work and work and work to get to the higher levels and the higher grades, and then you get rewarded for that by getting a better job. That's another thing. You absolutely need a high school education to get a sustainable job.
Well, why can't everybody get that high school education? Because a lot of kids aren't able to pay for such an education because of the capitalist idea.
High schools are...
we're creating dummies.
Unless they're going to private schools, anybody can go to public school. It's free. It's completely free. And most urban places where some of the kids are a little poor, they have drives where people donate school supplies to these kids for free.
I don't want my education to be reliable on people donating. I want it to be something that I can actually count on.
Well, then you can blame your parents for that because they didn't get a high school education because they may have not have had the chance, or they dropped out because of their own
But why
own
should I
reasons.
pay for it because my parents didn't make the right decisions?
You shouldn't.